I'm really looking forward to the chat today. I had a very lucky experience at Montreal Cocktail Fest to actually hear Pietro speak about his experience and talking about multi-venue management, which, as you probably have known from the podcast, I'm really into. Like, how do you sort of bridge this gap of um, being super passionate and super like fingers in deep in the pie of operations, and then trying to expand that, because sometimes we're so mentally exhausted as operators and as entrepreneurs and as hospitality people, they're so mentally exhausted from just doing one venue. Then you start going, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this over 5 now. So Pietro is the beverage director for Teslef Group. Has like 6 to, I think, 8 venues are coming up in the next little while. Also, I want to talk a little bit about his little side company, his White Box Cocktails as well, because that's a really interesting story as well. But well, good afternoon to you, because you are in London and I'm very early morning at Victoria, BC. So good morning, good afternoon.
Hey, what's up, Shawn? Yeah, I was super happy to be here, and yeah, really excited to tell you a little bit of what I do and answer any questions you might have.
That's awesome. Yeah, like it was. I really enjoyed your seminar at Montreal Cocktail Fest. I don't think I went in with anything, because I don't think I was overly knowledgeable about what you do, like beforehand, with like the NoMad Group, which is I know the NoMad Group is actually, because of, I know Leo really well, has always been sort of like an attainable goal sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I came out of the seminar, I was like, damn, especially when I was running a multi-venue place which wanted mass expansion, I was just like, man, that's the way you got to do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I basically worked with Leo for about 13 years, and I'm still alive, which is actually my biggest accomplishment, I think, to date. But yeah, no, I basically started in the hospitality industry when I was very, very young. But I started at 11 Madison Park in 2009. Very, very lucky moment to start, just because after about 7 months of me working there, we got our 4th star in New York Times. And then basically everything kind of erupted from there, where we became one of the kind of beacons of fine dining, of new modern fine dining in the United States. About 3 years later or so, the first NoMad hotel opened in New York, and where I basically went over there to be a bartender. And during that time, it was Leo did such a great job in kind of hiring some of the best people in the city. So you had talents from PDT, from Clover Club, from Death and Company. Everybody was like it was like a pirate ship of people trying to do a hotel bar. And we were kind of looking at hotel bars in Europe, which had like the sophistication, the class, the history. And New York hotel bars were terrible at the moment. They're all very much like unionized bars, where you had people who've been working there for 40 years who pretty much hate everything. So it was like a kind of a new venture, which was a lot of fun. So I was with the company for a long time. I did New York, and then obviously they expanded to LA. They did Vegas, and then eventually I became the beverage director of the East Coast, overseeing 11 Madison Park and NoMad New York. And then eventually I was asked to go international, to move to London to open up Davies and Brook, which was the first kind of fine dining restaurant that Daniel Hume did outside of the United States, at Claridge's Hotel, which was a historic property in London and Mayfair, and then open up NoMad in London. And now currently I'm, as you said, I'm the beverage director of Teslef Group, and overseeing 4 different properties, and things from small kind of really cute Italian restaurants to 400 seat venues in Liverpool Street. And then like my passion project, which is Viajante 87, which is a cocktail bar all inspired by Latin America, that's in Notting Hill.
Nice. So what was that moment in your career? Like, obviously you didn't go straight into fine dining. Where did you get your start? And then when was that switch to, oh, I really want to get into, like, was it a forced switch, or was it a switch that you're like in it and you were just like, oh, this is what I want to be doing?
To be honest, I've been in fine dining my entire life. I started in fine dining. Like I was, when I was about 17 years old, my parents realized really quickly I would not be able to have like a sit down desk job. So they were like, this kid needs to like learn how to do something in his career. So they introduced me actually to a Michelin star chef in London, because I was living in London at the time. So I was going to school in high school and working at this place called the Marks Club, which is one of the oldest private members club in London. And basically after that, I decided to go, there's a school called the CIA in upstate New York, which is all about hospitality and cooking. I really wanted to be a chef, and I kind of pursued that for food, but then fell in love with wine. So I did a 4-year degree, did my bachelor's in hospitality and everything, got really into wine. And that's why I chose kind of 11 Madison Park, because at that time it was one of the strongest wine programs in the city. Really young team. Like everyone was like probably in like their late 20s, early 30s, run by this guy named John Reagan, who, you know, is one of the most badass people in the industry. He became a master somm, and now I think he's the president of the Union Square Hospitality Group in New York. So he's like incredible person. So yeah, and I love fine dining. I came up from a sports background, so I like rules. Like I like kind of that kind of discipline. I like knowing when I'm doing something right. And fine dining is all about structure, rules. You know, you know when things are going well in fine dining, and that's what I like. I like the consistency of that.
So what was that moment where you were like going from heavy in your wine, that sort of the degree background that I want to be a wine sommelier, that's the thing, to like, oh, cocktail thing's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, I preach this all the time to people in the industry, that you can't really choose your mentor. You know, there's people you might look up to and you really want them to guide you, but it all depends on where they are in their lives. You know, they might have the bandwidth to bring you along, to help you along, or they might not. And at that point, I really wanted to be on the wine team. There was no space for me. They just were so stacked full of talent that, you know, I was there. I was doing blind tastings with them. I was learning everything. I did the whole Core Master Sommelier until I got my certified, and they allowed me to learn with them. But in terms of a job, it wasn't there. So I guess in a lot of times in your career, you have to think about, am I going to, you know, sit and wait? Am I going to pivot, or am I going to leave? And fortunately at that time, this gentleman named Kirk Kellaway was running the beer program there. And it was one of the most impressive beer programs in the country. It was the first time a fine dining restaurant was doing kind of beer pairings as like a 12-course meal. And I learned everything about kind of running a cellar, but with beer instead of with wine. I learned how to, you know, do tasting sheets. I learned how to do inventory. I learned how to, you know, educate people about the beer. So it was basically the same thing, except in a different realm. And then while doing that, I caught the attention of Leo, who was like, oh, this kid looks like he's interested. He wants to do something. So eventually he gave me an opportunity to work behind the bar.
Wow. How old were you around that era?
I was 22 years old, probably.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like 22. And it was also a good combination, because for a lot of time I did a lot of cooking, and then I studied wine, and then I realized cocktails is basically balancing the creativity and the flavor profile of cooking. You're finding your language of what your tastes are like doing wine, doing blind wine tasting, and creating a vocabulary for your palate. And then you have the hospitality aspect of being in front of the house, and you kind of mesh it all together to become a bartender.
Yeah, now I think your retirement plan is going to be like a dive bar somewhere. It's just going to be like, I'm just going to get rid of all the fine dining. My retirement plan is just opening a dive bar somewhere.
Yeah, I was just pouring pints. That's it.
Just an epic beer and wine list and a small little great cocktail menu in a dive bar. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So when you start expanding off this sort of baseline you had into like multi-team stuff, how do you balance on a personal level, not so much the team, but on a personal level, your level of creativity to sort of really be passionate about your cocktails and sort of do that, but then also balance it out with the needs for systems and repeatability? Was that something that was in you already, or was that something you had to learn along the way?
I mean, I think I learned that along the way. I think the biggest shift was when we opened the first NoMad. Our systems were what we're doing at 11 Madison Park. We're not going to work at NoMad. It was, you know, we were doing something like 1,000 cocktails a day. So every single day, they were R&Ding systems, changing things up, changing the way that we organized the bar, all the mapping of, you know, batching, everything was kind of done. But, you know, it was funny because I remember in the beginning, Leo always said like he always liked big menus. No, the opening menu at NoMad was something ridiculous. It was like 36 cocktails or something. And, you know, I remember after like friends and family, Will Guidera, I basically told Leo, cocktails are taking too long. You either figure this out or we're cutting the menu by half. So it was basically like a mad rush of panic. Everyone was like, okay, we need to figure this out, or else it's going to be, you know, we're not going to be able to showcase what we want to do. So yeah, I think you need to go through the pain. You need to go through those pressure and find those pressure points. And it has a lot to do with also not it's you're seeing the problem, you're writing it down. At the end of the night, you're talking about it, and then you implement the next day. It's not a long discussion of like, oh, maybe we do this, let's talk about it next week. No, it's like, these are the issues, this is what we're going to try the next day, see if it works. Okay, it's a little bit better, let's do a little better. So it's really assessing during those first 2 months of an opening, 3 months of an opening, every night, how to tweak. And if you become complacent in a 1 month of opening and you think you got it, you're wrong. You're completely wrong, because you're blinded, or you're becoming complacent, and you're not seeing the potential of actually cleaning up, the time and time management. Because the more time you save during operations, the more time you have with your guests, which means the better experience you can give.
Do you think that's a issue to a degree for a lot of cocktail bar and operators? As you said, you consulted for a year in the green room, and you were like, it was a breath of fresh air. Do you think that's the romance some operators and like bar managers have, like outside looking in social media, like we got to do it this way, and that way can't change because that's just the way it is, instead of trying to figure out how to make it more faster and make it more manageable through service?
Well, I think any person who runs like an F&B outlet, wants things to be efficient, wants things to be consistent and to be high quality, right? However, a lot of people don't want to go through the pain of tweaking systems and making things uncomfortable for like day-to-day like learnings. I think ultimately, it's really down to the floor manager and really down to how they, kind of implement change to a team. If you're forcing change onto people who don't want it, like it's never going to happen. It's about, even when we did, me and Veronica, my partner in business, and my wife, when we did consulting jobs, the first thing that we did was always have meetings with the team and hear all of their complaints, right? You hear all of their complaints, you hear what they hate about the job, what's not working, what's everything, which is a lot of the times things you want to change anyway, right? Because you kind of have the same line. And then you basically motivate them and tell them, this is where we want this place to be. This is where we want to give you opportunity. And you get them on board, and then you start doing the changes. If you just show up and you're like, this is the changes we're doing, and you're not telling them the reason behind it or making them feel they're involved in it, you're never gonna, you're gonna get a lot of backlash. And that's the same thing when it comes to actually just managing different, different restaurants or different bar teams across my group. You need to make sure they feel involved. You're hearing their feedback, and then you need to tell them the goal of where it is and understand what the KPIs are to reach it.
Do you find that the lofty nature of like management and then the individual that is in your team working, do you find that I always live by a rule that we're both going to the same destination, but sometimes on two different roads? How do you sort of align that when it is not so much inside service, outside service, when you can actually have a chance to sit down and chat to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing? Like, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I pick my moments in terms of when I communicate with the team. Like I always think that you don't ever like take advantage of a time where you can actually communicate in person with a large group of people. That's why like things like lineups are so important to me. Lineups is like a time where you have individuals becoming a team, and that's like the moment you huddle together. And those are the times where I like to kind of communicate our ethos or our direction, getting them excited about events that we're doing in the future, even though I might not be having one-on-ones with barbacks in one of my, in one of my restaurants. But, I do recognize that when I walk in, there's a new face. I go introduce myself. I do recognize if someone got promoted from a barback to a bartender, I go say, congratulations. And then we're excited to do more things together. I try to do kind of like quarterly, I try to do about a 5-day training session per venue or with all the new employees that are starting, where they actually spend like 5 days with me as a group of 6 people or stuff, where I go through all the motions of technique, reasoning behind the menu, kind of also talking about like, everything from our R&D process to the way that we do hospitality, the way that we do education for like back bar education. So I try to spend as much time as possible. But to be honest, I spend more time with my bar managers and my assistant bar managers, because those are the people that really need my support and my leadership, and also help me navigate between what a GM of a location is looking to do, what the corporate is looking in terms of, maybe monetary budgeting or branding, and the day-to-day life of how they execute it. So I'm kind of like this middleman of like softening all the blows between the realizations of things and helping them give like actual actual items they can do for service to make it happen.
I've had that happen a couple of times when I've left, and I left, and a month or two later, my right hand's like, yeah, I understand what you buffered for all those years. I'm like, well,
yeah,
it's not easy dealing with the upper management. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially when you're still in the mix of service.
Yeah, and like, every single time there's something that a head of our CEO is saying to me or to something, or my CFO wants these type of performances and everything, I give my bar managers and my sim bar managers the information, right? But I don't give them every single aspect of like the dread and misery behind all the decisions, or also just stress them out. I rather them like understand, okay, these are what we're trying to do. This is like the range in terms of the budget we're trying to hit. You're doing well. This is when you're doing well. This is when you need to improve. It's not like the death rattle of some places.
It's the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. You kind of need to filter everything out to make it motivating, because at the end of the day, you're trying to motivate your team, not trying to scare them into submission.
Do you still get the creative juices flowing? You still get in and get your hands dirty when it comes to cocktail creation R&D, or are you more sitting there watching what everybody else is sort of doing and just sort of tweaking things and helping them along?
Cocktail creation is the thing I will never let go. I love cocktail creation. I do most of all the cocktail creation for the entire company. And my bar managers and head bartenders and everything now are doing it with me, which is great. I'm so excited because I'm like leading them along the process. Actually, I just had a meeting yesterday about it, where my bar manager from one of my venues, Los Mochis, which is the 400-seat venue, he wants to take the lead this year. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm like, yes, take the lead. We'll have our first meeting. We'll talk about what we want to take off the menu. We'll talk about all the categories that we need to hit. We'll talk about the ingredients we want to play with. We'll talk about the brands we're working with, how to put them in. We'll talk about the volumes we need to hit each brand. And it makes it much more interesting. So I can hopefully like we already scheduled today pretty soon we have our flip on the 29th of September for our fall winter flip. And we have every single Thursday from now till then, we have an R&D session where we have like areas we need to complete and then do a final tasting. Even our CEO, I have to do a tasting of all the drinks to my CEO before they go live. He's like that. He loves it. He's really interested in what we're doing in terms of beverage, and cares a lot about the final result.
That's very cool, because sometimes once you get to that sort of level, you sort of lose it. Well, let's just talk about that with the R&D of it. How long does it usually take you to R&D a menu?
It depends on the venue. So Sale Pepe is our Italian concept. I do 2 flips a year, a kind of like winter, like a fall winter flip and like a spring summer flip. And I like to look out about 2 months ahead of time to basically get the concepting, the brands and everything that we're working with, and then put the menu into place. Los Mochis, we do 3 flips a year, where it's a fall flip. Then we do one in the winter in February, and then a spring summer. That's all because for the company, us in the UK, we do a lot of partnerships with spirits and everything, and brands and everything. So all my partnership years usually start in February, and I basically do the whole year round. So I update all the menu at that point. And then for Viajante, we do 1 menu a year, but that menu takes 6 months to create, because that's everything with like sourcing ingredients from all over Latin America, doing a lot of R&D and tweaking of like really concepting. And those are really, Viajante is trying to be like, kind of a world-class cocktail bar, right? So like you really need to understand the story behind every single drink, how it goes with the brand of the bar, how it goes in terms of like the relevancy of the program, the techniques, Also making sure that I have very talented bartenders and they want to showcase what they want to do. So making sure they have time as well to create their best iteration of their work. So we try to take as much time and patience with that menu until it's perfect.
Oh, wow. So when you did Viajante, because Viajante is like relatively new, the newer venue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 2 years.
Was that your idea pitched to your company, or was the company saying, hey, it's time for you to open up? Because when you talk about 400 seat, massive, high volume venues with great cocktails and food and everything, 400 seats for Canada is like a crazy number to even like try and comprehend.
Gigantic.
400 seat cocktail bar just doesn't even, like, it's an oxymoron. And then of course cocktail bars, they're beautiful and wonderful and get a lot of notoriety and stuff like that, but they usually don't bring back the same sort of return. How was the direction when that opened?
Yes. So what happened was Veronica and I left NoMad, I think it's like 2022. And, I was working for the company for 13 years. So, 13 years of like just grinding, going hard. And my wife was working for Dandelion in London. So also, she won #1 bar in the world. And everything. And then was working for a PR company called LX that basically does the PR for all the 50 best bars in the world.
I've done a fair bit of stuff. Like.
Exactly. So we realized that, we're kind of burnt out. We need to refill our gas tank. We need to be inspired. So we decided to actually take a trip all around Latin America to kind of do some events with our friends, but also spend basically a month in each country to discover like the food, discover the ingredients, and just like live life and like kind of have that, joy of living. If you want to learn how to live life, spend time in Colombia. Like the nicest people, most vibrant, super positive. It's beautiful. And it kind of makes you give you a little perspective in terms of everything, traveling around Latin America. And what happened was, we were doing a bunch of different consulting projects as well, came back, was doing consulting projects for different hotel groups in the UK, as well as in the Caribbean. And the CEO of Teslef Group, his name is Marcus Teslef, he approached us and basically said, we have this bar, Notting Hill. We opened it, 4 months ago. We don't know what to do with it. Like, it's just all beautiful. It's brand new. It's in Notting Hill. It's a basement bar. Do you want to go see it? I'm like, yeah, let's look at it. So we look at it. It's really beautiful space. It's kind of like tucked, like hidden gem. And we were like, okay, we can help you. You're looking for cocktails, and they're like, oh no, we're looking for an identity. We're looking for everything. And we want you guys to spearhead it. And me and Veronica were like, okay, well, I mean, when does an opportunity come of a brand new bar with all the brand new equipment, with a new rotavap, a new centrifuge, brand new stations, a liquor room, a walk-in refrigerator? I think that's what sold me, actually, is the walk-in refrigerator. Like a walk-in, like everything for it. And I was like, I think we just do it. And like, we just, we roll the dice. We take the opportunity to see what we can do. And not only in terms of drinks wise, but in terms of creating a brand, creating a visual identity, creating a whole communications package, building a bar team, and that's what we did. So basically he gave us pretty much carte blanche and was like, okay, like here's the keys, help us realize what the potential of this place is. So her and I basically worked on the been working the project for 2 years. Very fortunate because, we have an incredible team, super talented bartenders. And we have it's like a fun vibe as well, Viajante. It's, it's based off of Latin America, but Viajante means traveler. It's like it's all about travel. So we use kind of the nostalgia travel, where you use ingredients all across Latin America to kind of create all these different delicious cocktails. And then we also throw some incredible events. One of them being kind of the culture exchange, where we basically take most of the time it's like a 50 best chef and a 50 best bar from a country. And they basically come together and we do a 4-course, 5-course dinner with 5-course cocktail pairings. And what we do is the bar itself just brings ingredients with them. And we create all the cocktail pairings 24 hours beforehand in the bar. Nice. When we collaborate with the other bars. So we get to kind of see how they would utilize the ingredients, and then they get to see how we would utilize the ingredients through a different lens. Because Viajante as drinks, they're not Latin American drinks. They're very much European style drinks with Latin American flavors. So they also see us using things being like, oh, I've never used an ingredient that way before. Or we look at it and be like, oh, that's a very interesting way of, doing it. So it's it's a really fun kind of collaboration. And, Viajante is, sometimes, looking, it's good to be emotionally attached to projects and being very all in. Sometimes it can hurt you. So, sometimes you're just, your blinders on and you're working crazy hours and it becomes a passion project. And sometimes you need to step away and be like, okay, it's a business, control, controls, get things, and get things in order.
Well, that's a good segue because like, I was curious, are you good at, or have you learned it, how to compartmentalize your life in that regard? Because like, you'll be going into accounting meetings and budgeting meetings with controllers who have no real concept of what's going on the floor and how much service costs and so on and so forth. And then you're flipping it over to like a young bartender who just may have come up from a bar back and you want to sort of nurture him or her a little bit more. And then you're into a meeting on R&D and so on and so forth. How do are you good at compartmentalizing that? Because I think regardless if you've got a single unit as an owner or a multi-unit as a beverage director, like you need to be better at that.
Yeah, I'm getting better. Like it's a journey, because in the beginning you think you can do back-to-back meetings for 6 hours and then, get something out of it, and you can't. And, and sometimes I used to mix a lot of like a finance meeting followed by a R&D meeting, followed by a one-on-one that goes into like an event. And your brain is going in so many different directions. So what I try to do a lot of the time is I bunch together all of my like really like a lot of like my Excel work, my finance work, my like reporting work all in like one day. And then I time block 3 to 4 hours for creative time. And I have a bunch of time blocks in my week where even if I'm not scheduled for something, I'm scheduled. We're like, no, like this is my 2 hours where I don't know what I'm doing yet those 2 hours, but it's like my time where I can either do those 2 hours as like a creative endeavor, or I can do those 2 hours as a one-on-one. I try not to wing my weeks too much where like, or even my days, at the end of the day, I use a Google Keep. Like my Google Keep is like, it's psychotic. Like it's, I can't remember anything unless it's written down. So like my Google Keep is like just notes like that, and like things highlighted. It's just constant notes, ideas. And if I don't write it down, it doesn't exist with me. And I'm also in the phase, if I'm going from one meeting to another, walking from one venue to another, and you're talking to me, like, and you think like I'll listen, I'll have a conversation, but you need to send an email to confirm, what you said we're implementing and everything, because if it's not an email, it doesn't exist in my life at this point.
So with that being said, like, how do you build this trust in your team for yourself personally, especially with your like Viajante and stuff like that? That Viajante is your project, is your baby. Yeah. How do you build trust in your team for you to personally be able to detach from that? Because I think, as we talked about it in the green room, you just mentioned, like, you get so fingers in the pie, like everything has to be done because you're the only person in your head, you're the only person that can do it that way. How do you sort of transfer that to your team so that in turn you get that, okay, well, I don't need to be here, I can step out and let the team look after it?
So when we started Viajante, me and Veronica were probably in service almost like every day, or if not like 4 days out of the week. Probably for like the first year and a half, like we were there all the time, constantly. And, I think you need to lead by example, as much as you possibly can. And also when I started the project, before I was the beverage director of all Teslef Group, just Viajante, I basically made the decision with the CEO of the group being like, okay, if you want me to do the entire group, just leave me Viajante for 4 months, 5 months, where that's all I do is Viajante. And then once in 5 months, I should have a clear team, a clear concept. I should be able to, ensure my trust to the team a little bit more before I start looking at other venues. So, even when we're doing 2 more openings this year, and that's my plan, is like when we do an opening, I'm there for the first 3 months, like as much as I possibly can. And obviously always checking in with my other bar managers, having, a face-to-face conversation with a lot of them. But, it's so crucial to get the culture right from the beginning, or else you're going to be spending so much more time fixing things. And then, and also you kind of need to be realistic about like your bandwidth. Sometimes you think you can do everything, and you just make everything becomes mediocre, or everything just becomes half-assed. And it's the worst situation is when you look at all your different projects going on and you're like, wow, everything is like, okay, like nothing is really like to the best of its abilities. And then you're like, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should just focus on one thing. I can make it the best in the world. And it goes into that spiral of doubt.
Yeah, we all have that.
Yeah.
Tell us about White Box Cocktails, because that was a fun story that you sort of peppered in there when we did the seminar in Montreal. Like a lot of stuff came out of the pandemic, but tell us about White Box.
Yeah. So White Box is I'm a co-founder of a canned cocktail company called White Box. We started it in 2021, and basically what happened was during the pandemic, a friend of mine, his name is Alex Lawrence, sent me basically a Negroni in the mail. And it was basically like a Cryovac bag with a Negroni, where you basically open it up and you can have a Negroni over streaming, right?
Yeah.
The weird time pandemic, right? So you would have a Negroni, and on the box itself was a little kind of like a little cocktail man. It kind of looks like kind of like a fruit punch, kind of a high C kind of man of like a Negroni. And I love the brand of it. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I love the idea. So I talked to him. And I was like, what's this all about? And he's like, oh yeah, we're just sending it to people. But we're thinking maybe doing a cocktail, maybe possibly doing like, start bottling them, or doing it like sending it out. I feel like everyone started a bottling cocktail business during the pandemic. It was like one of those. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like I'd totally be interested in helping you out and participating in any way. So he's like, oh, perfect. So it was me, Alex, this guy named Ben, and Josh. We kind of came together and started putting money together to kind of start this entity of a canned cocktail business. And we started very slowly. We had like a one canning machine where it's like one can at a time. You seal and you put the can away, and next can you seal. We have a warehouse in Scotland, in Edinburgh, because that's where Ben and Josh live, and they also were the ones who created Porter's Gin, so they already had kind of like concepts in terms of distribution, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of licensing, all that kind of stuff. So we were doing everything from up there, and then slowly, started getting a little bit more investors. Started producing a little bit more things, and I think in the first year we had something maybe like 200 independent retailers that carried White Box. So like, all these like corner stores, some wine shops, things like that. We had, different SKUs, but it was really like the Pocket Negroni, which was really like the most popular one. And then, we just kind of kept hitting the ground, kept doing different sales channels, got our first distributor who started, sending it to a lot of different other people, slowly built up to 400 a year the next year. And now we're, 2025, and slowly, right now we have over 1,000 different distribution points all over the UK. We are now in the LCBO in Canada. So we got the contract, which is incredible, which the product's great and it's amazing, but it's seriously the test run of White Box in Canada was the exact same time as when they pulled all the United States products off the shelf. So it was like that month, it was like, oh, let's see if this canned cocktail from Scotland works. And they just pull all the American products off the shelf. And they were like, wow, sales are amazing. I'm like, yes, incredible. So now we're like, I think we're in 200 different stores in Canada, and we're trying to get up to like 600. We're in the UAE, so in like Dubai, and we're in 5 different countries in Europe.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so it's been growing exponentially. This year was like a really nice year, good year for us, and hopefully we double our sales from last year. And now we have 2 canning lines. One of them can do 4,800 cans an hour. So like it's good in terms of production. Is great. We're about to release a couple more SKUs in September, October, and right now we have 9, and we all specialize in full strength classic cocktails. So basically the type of cocktails you'll find in bars, and they're all 100 ml cans. And it's also like a really interesting time for white box and for RTDs in general, because if you look at the trends in terms of spirits, a lot of them are very much stagnant or downturn in a lot of spirits companies. And RTDs is one of the only area with growth across like the actual cocktail sector. It used to be all about like hard seltzers and then like maybe like carbonated high drinks. And now that cocktail sector is really booming, which is incredible. And and then also I think because of also the downturn of economically across the world, people don't go out drinking as much in bars because it's expensive, and people used to maybe go out 2-3 times a week, maybe to have a drink with their coworkers after work, maybe go to a cocktail bar or two. But, now, even here in London, cocktails can range, from 15 pounds to 20 pounds. In New York City, they're ridiculously expensive everywhere you go. It's crazy. And people have gotten the taste of what a real cocktail should taste like. So they know the difference of like some really shitty canned cocktail and something's like, oh, wait, this actually tastes like it's from a bar, but it costs me $3.
Yeah.
And I can have it at home, and I can have, and especially now when people are tightening their belts in terms of spending, having these little like treasures, these little like guilty pleasure of like premium, like something premium, but something they can afford, like affordable luxuries. That's like really going big. So, we try to also, when we sell them, we put them right next to checkout. We invested a lot into like mini fridges next to the counter. We try to do a lot of different things to be able to promote that kind of indulgence buying, that last bit just to throw in your fridge, bring them to the park, things like that. And it's been working.
That's incredible. Just a nice little side hustle during the pandemic when you were sending people cocktails so you could all Zoom on Friday afternoon because you were stuck at home.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely crazy. And, it has a lot to do, obviously, with every single day, the hard work that all the guys in like the production, in the warehouse do, all the guys, Ben and Josh and all their like networks in terms of distribution. It is a grind, and like in the R&D process of that is crazy because, thinking of making a cocktail that tastes like a bar, that is shelf stable for 2 years in a can, that doesn't alter, doesn't split or anything, that takes forever.
Yeah, it's not an easy project. So what's on the we're just over halfway through the year now. So what's well, geez, I've been saying that for a couple of months now, and it's like August 1st. It's inventory day. What's the plan for the rest of the year for you?
Yeah, so right now, I'm working on 2 different openings right now. So we have one of our concepts called Pepe. It's an Italian restaurant that's been open since pretty much like the 50s in London, that we took over about 3 years ago. That's going well. It's in Knightsbridge, and we're actually about to open up the second location, but it's going to be called Pepe Mare, so all about coastal Italian food. And that's actually opening up in the Langham Hotel right behind Artesian.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, so it's a beautiful space. It's used to be an old fine dining restaurant by this famous chef named Michel Roux. So right now we're all in the development phase of it, like what the brand is going to be like, what the offering is going to be, the service. There's a thing called a critical path, which is basically the timeline from 8 months before an opening, where you're basically ticking off your to-do list. You're having meetings every week, basically making sure everyone's aligned, from marketing, from finance, from development, from purchasing, from creative, food, drinks. And that's really what I love doing more than anything. Looking back at my career, pretty much since 2015, I've been opening up places like every year, every other year. And, I've been part of critical paths and being part of not only the kind of the beverage side of the branding side, and like in terms of like what, like, because the thing which is beautiful, I think, about the being a bar director or anything is it has a lot to do with every single point of a restaurant experience, because you're not only guest facing, but you're also working with the kitchen, right? So you're doing a lot of stuff in the kitchen. You're doing a lot of stuff in the dining room. You're doing a lot of stuff with the branding, because you want to make sure there's cohesiveness between the design of the space, the food that's going to happen, and the drinks that follow. You're doing a lot of things with the partnerships because, now, you're able to work with different, brands, not only with spirit brands, but, I do also wine. So it's everything from wine, spirits, distributors, beer, soft drinks, but also things like maybe, fashion brands or different things like that. Like, how are we going to put life into this brand in so many different aspects? And the funny thing about like a bar director, it's such a new job. Like, no, you can ask 15 bar directors around the world what they do, and everyone's doing something different. Like everyone's priorities are different. And, talking about bar directors, there's bar directors that are for companies that have lots of different venues with different concepts. And then there's bar directors that have maybe a lot of different properties with one concept. Mm-hmm. So maybe the bar director for that is all about maintenance. It's about making sure that you're staying true to that brand. You're opening a new location. The standards are the same. It feels the same as the flagship. There is cohesion in terms of maybe your purchasing power. There's cohesion in terms of your narrative, your voice, all that kind of stuff. And then there's bar directors that jump on a new project and a new concept every 6 months and be like, oh, fuck, I'm doing a Japanese concept now. Oh, no, wait, I'm doing an Italian concept. I'm doing this beach property and a beach bar concept now. And like, so it's completely different. And then also, obviously there's this core ranges for a beverage director. It's very much, a lot of it's about finance. It's finance, creativity, consistency, training, staff and like staffing, leadership positions. But now more than ever, it has a lot to do with communications. It has a lot to do with marketing, with activations, and the creativity that I found for so long being a bartender a head bartender, bar manager, which was all about the drinks, the hospitality experience, the steps of service, everything like that. I use all that creativity for like organizing events, activations, organizing, like I use the same creativity in terms of, okay, I need to make this deal with this one brand. How are we going to work this out? Like, we want to do these 3 different activations. How are we going to make it interesting? How do we, divert, how do we distinguish ourselves from other places that are also doing different events or activations? How do I creatively work with different, marketing teams, PR teams to like put out the voice or the narrative of what we're trying to do, all that kind of stuff. So there's so much creativity that goes on, even like financial creativity in terms of how you allocate resources, funds, budgets, CapEx funds, all that kind of stuff. So the creativity carries on. It's just in a different realm.
It's amazing. So we've come to the stage of the podcast where I ask 5 deep podcast questions. This always trips everybody up pretty hard. So I love it because it's very raw. What is the one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, there's one experience that I think about often, and there's one experience that I think about often when I think about standards, and it's when I started 11 Madison Park. They give you like a big fat book to study on everything from like the menu, like all the different the tasting menus, all the wines by the glass, everything. And you have like 2 weeks to learn how to be a kitchen server, which is like you just bring dishes out and plates to the table and you explain the plates. After 2 weeks, I studied like hell every single second. I was outside of work. I was studying at work. I couldn't study anymore. And I took the test. And I got something like an 80% on the test, like even like an 85 on the test. It was like 30 questions or something. And it was like, each question was like, give me the ingredients in this dish. And the dish is like 14 ingredients. And that's like, if you got it right, got them all right, that's 1 point. So it was like ridiculous. And I got like an 80%. And Will Gadara, he told me, he sent me home. He said I wasn't ready to be live and to serve his tables. And I was like, fuck. I was like, it was like, it hurt. Like I was so angry and upset because I couldn't study so much. Like I couldn't do it anymore. But like it kind of set the standard before you got into a place and started interacting and working with different people, like what the expectation was. And I think there's nothing better than when you have someone starting in any bar or restaurant to set the expectation right from the beginning of like what you need to do. And it kind of shapes me all the time in terms of like, it depends on where your trajectory is of that restaurant. That restaurant was trying to be one of the best restaurants in the world, you know, was trying to get its 4th star, you know, in New York Times. And he needed people to work. But at that point he said, no, like you need to go home and study and come back. And I think about that all the time, especially during like, you know, labor shortages in like London, when you're trying to find staff and you're understaffed and you're like, fuck man, I just need legs. I need hands. I need people. And then like, it made me always think like never to manage by fear, where like you're so scared you'll take anybody. And like so I think about that a lot.
What did you get on the test when you went and did it again?
100%. But what I did actually is on the way out of the restaurant, I made a reservation to eat there that night, because I was so tired of looking at note cards where I walked in 2 hours later and Will was furious. He was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm here to eat because I can't study note cards anymore. I need to eat the food. I need to like know it. So I sat down for 3 hours. I ate the entire meal with my note cards, took notes on everything. And then next day I took the test.
That's incredible. Please, yeah. I'm gonna make sure I fucking cut this, because like I actually have one of my most popular episodes on YouTube is how to nail your first shift. And it's going in and drinking and eating in the venue before you even interview. Like if it's a place you want to go, like go and experience it, and then you're ready for the interview. I usually don't even interject in this section, but if you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
One lasting message of peace and wisdom to the world. I would say you're a product of your environment. I say that more than anything. You're a product of your environment, and it's your responsibility to learn from that environment and eventually contribute to that environment. Like your trajectory of your possibilities of what you can do is by surrounding people who are ambitious around you, who are disciplined around you, who like have their shit together. Because if you're in that world, like you just need to catch up. Like you need to keep up, and it changes your trajectory. Like I feel so fortunate I started 11 Madison Park because it set the standard of operations. You know, if I started in a lot of different places, I would, you know, I might have not have had the same expectation of maybe my career, or the same expectation of people around me of what they can do. So yeah, I think you're a product of your environment.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you had understood earlier in life?
Probably that at the end of the day, sales and revenue is basically not the most consequential thing, but is the thing that will affect a lot of decision-making things of a restaurant business. It's really, you know, it's a lot of people start with like the brand, the concept, the food, the drinks, the creativity. But if you're not disciplined in terms of organizing your finances and your sales, and you can't drive revenue, it doesn't matter that you're making the best cocktails, the best hospitality, the best food in the world, because unfortunately at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's not viable as a business. So once you get revenue in order, then you can really like start playing and doing a lot of really cool shit and doing cool stuff. But it's important to get the bones right of a restaurant, and that also starts with, most important thing is the lease you negotiate. If you mess up the lease negotiation, you're done.
Yeah. How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
I used to external affirmation. I would get it from other people and get awards and stuff like that. I don't think at all like that at all anymore. I define success as a couple of things. One is I define success by being able to have dinner with my wife like constantly, and being there at night with her. That I feel I feel proud that I'm able in my career that I can do that after 15 years of working nights till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I find that as a beacon. I find success as being in a place where not only are you able to give input that gets actualized, but you're able to also be in an environment where you're learning. If you're somewhere where your input is being put into the organization and you're learning something, you're good. Like you're in a good place. Like that's successful. And I think also success for me is from so long I put too much emphasis on my career as my identity, and now I'm not like that anymore. Now I have so much more that I like about myself and my life and stuff that I don't need to have my career accolades as a crutch to define myself.
Nice. What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
I hope I guess my legacy, I hope in career terms, I hope there's like people when I become like, in my 60s that I can go to different hotels or restaurants or bars and see people that have been trained by people I trained, or part of that generation of like that umbrella, that family tree. I remember when like NoMad New York closed, and all those people like spread across the city and opened, and were bar directors and bar managers at all these places. And going back to New York felt so cool because I was like, fuck, like look at all these people, like they're like running the city now. It's awesome. So I love that. And I also think like career wise, like I hope White Box like has legs. Like I hope White Box has longevity and able to kind of create delicious cocktails and open the world of cocktails to a mass of people. I think that's cool. I remember the first time I made it, my first cocktail, 11 Madison Park, it was my creation, and the first guest had my first cocktail. I was like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing. And now having White Box, where like, we sold our 1 millionth cocktail last year.
Wow.
Like thinking like, 1 million people have had something that you created. That's awesome. Like I don't undervalue that.
That's cool. What is your classic cocktail to finish off? What's your favorite classic cocktail?
I mean, now I'm drinking. I'm like a martini person. Like I drink martinis, but if I'm boring, if I'm normal, I always have a gin 5-to-1 martini with a twist. But I always love, like, if I'm at a place that I know can make good martini variations, I always order things like Martinez, or like using like a Bijou, or things like that. Like I always like to use like just different martini variations because I like something like nice and stiff.
Martini's been making a comeback. Like all my guests wise, like most of my guests is like Martini's been making a serious comeback.
Yeah, I think it's it's a classic drink, and after drinking for so many years in this industry, you need something punchy, I guess.
Yeah, we're not tapering off. We're actually like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, man, thank you so much for the conversation, the chat, and it's just awesome. I think it is one thing is like running your own venue to running multiple venues for a group is such a massive leap, and I think sometimes a lot of younger bartenders or bar managers who think, oh, we can just keep replicating what I do. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. So I really appreciate the chat. So thank you so much.
Awesome, man. No, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was super fun. And yeah, thank you so much. It was awesome.
I'll chat to you really soon, my friend.